Hey, dollar scholars! Is your paycheck not going as far? Groceries cost more, gas is ridiculous. Even your morning coffee somehow doubled in price. Seriously, when did coffee become a luxury item? Sure, inflation is a big reason, but what if there's another invisible tax hitting your wallet? Enter the trade war, and at its heart, tariffs. A tax on imported goods that politicians claim will punish other countries. But the only one getting punished is you. Tariffs can make your iPhone, groceries, and gas more expensive. They shake up jobs, sometimes protecting them, but often hurting others in the process. And once a trade war starts, history shows it rarely ends without collateral damage. So if tariffs are meant to help, why do they always seem to backfire? In this video, we are going to find out what trade wars actually are and why you are the one paying for them. Why history proves they never go as planned. The sneaky ways they drain your wallet without you even noticing. So, one country imposes tariffs on another country's goods. What happens next? Well, the other country isn't happy. They retaliate, hitting back with their own tariffs. Before you know it, tensions escalate and a full-blown trade war erupts. Remember when the US put tariffs on Chinese goods in 2018? Well, China didn't just let it slide. They hit back with their own tariffs on American products, choosing targets that would hurt the most. One of the biggest? US farmers. China was the largest buyer of American soybeans, but after the tariffs, they cut their purchases by 75%. In 2014, US exports to China were worth $24 billion. But by 2018, that number had dropped to just $9.1 billion. With fewer buyers, American farmers were struggling to sell their crops and losing money fast. To help them out, the US government stepped in with a massive $28 billion bailout, more than what the government spends in a year on building Navy ships or even maintaining the country's nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, American companies that relied on Chinese manufactured components like Apple, Tesla, and Caterpillar saw costs rise. Many either raised prices or shifted production to Vietnam and Mexico to avoid the tariffs. That's how trade wars work. One country fires, the other retaliates, and both sides feel the burn. Want proof that tariffs don't always go as planned? Let's take a little trip back in time. It's 1930. The US economy is already on edge after a stock market crash. Panic is setting in. So lawmakers come up with a plan. Raise tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods to force Americans to buy local and save jobs. What happened next? Other countries retaliated with their own tariffs. US exports collapsed by 60%, which meant factories closed, paychecks disappeared, and suddenly people who had jobs yesterday were standing in bread lines today. Thousands of businesses shut down, not because of competition, but because global trade slowed to a crawl. The goal was to protect American jobs, and instead it made things way worse. That's like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it. Fast forward nearly a century later, and history was repeating itself, but with motorcycles, bourbon, and denim. In 2018, the US put tariffs on European steel and aluminum. The EU fired back, targeting iconic American products like Harley-Davidson motorcycles, Kentucky bourbon, and Levi's jeans. With tariffs adding $2,200 to the cost of every motorcycle, Harley-Davidson made a big decision: move production overseas. So instead of saving American jobs, the tariffs pushed them out of the country. And that's just one way trade wars backfire. They don't just hurt businesses, they hit your wallet in unexpected ways too. But sometimes tariffs don't just affect the industries being targeted. They have ripple effects that spill over into completely unrelated areas like housing. Ever wonder why home prices skyrocketed in the past few years? Sure, inflation played a part, but so did tariffs. In 2017, the US slapped tariffs on Canadian lumber. That made it way more expensive to build new homes. With fewer homes being built, housing supply shrank while demand stayed the same, and home prices soared. Even if you weren't planning to buy a house, guess what? Your rent jumped too. Because tariffs don't just stop at the border, they spread through the entire economy. And if you think that's bad, let's talk about cars. Thinking about getting a new one? Well, buckle up. Tariffs made that decision a lot more expensive too. The US put tariffs on foreign steel and aluminum. Car companies like Ford, GM, and Tesla rely on those materials, so they had two choices: eat the cost and lose money, or raise car prices. Guess which one they picked? So now buying a car is even worse than negotiating at the dealership. And repairs? Yeah, those got pricier too. But sometimes tariffs don't just make things more expensive. They create the perfect conditions for a classic supply and demand problem. Take washing machines, for example. In 2018, the US put a 50% tariff on imported washing machines to help domestic manufacturers. Sounds good in theory, right? Here's what actually happened. Imports plunged, so there were fewer washing machines on the market. But demand stayed the same because, let's be honest, people still need to wash their clothes. And with less competition, companies could charge more. So instead of prices going down, they jumped by an average of $86 per washing machine. Even American-made ones, basic supply and demand in action. When supply shrinks while demand stays the same, prices go up. So now you're paying extra just to wash your socks. So here's the thing. Tariffs aren't just some political buzzword. They're a sneaky tax you're already paying. They make your groceries, gas, and rent more expensive, while your paycheck stays the same. Businesses get hit too, some win, but a lot struggle or even shut down. And guess who's footing the bill? Yep, you. So next time you hear about tariffs, don't just tune it out, check your grocery receipt. That invisible tax? It's already in your cart. Wouldn't it be nice if politicians had to pay it instead? Speaking of price hikes, what's the most ridiculous one you've seen lately? A $2,000 iPhone with no charger or eggs, so expensive you thought about getting your own chickens? Let us know in the comments. I need to know that I'm not the only one suffering. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe because it is still 100% tariff-free, and hit that like button before they figure out how to tax that too.